You're listening to the Casting for Fun podcast, the show that talks about entertainment, sports, music, and inspirational stories for all to enjoy. We're glad you could join us today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Now, here is your host, Albert Pineda.
But the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone! In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Welcome, everybody, to the Casting for Fun podcast. I am your host, Albert Pineda, and this week's episode is for Wednesday, October 11th, 2023. And you just heard the iconic call made by legendary Dodgers broadcaster Vin Scully, calling the improbable home run from Kirk Gibson to win Game 1 of the 1988 World Series against the Athletics. And as we all know, the Dodgers would go on to win that series and win the World Series in 1988. And we're celebrating now the 35th anniversary of that particular play and that particular season on October 15th, so this coming Sunday. So I thought it was perfect time to commemorate and celebrate that momentous occasion by honoring it here on the Casting for Fun podcast. So to join me this week, I'm having two very awesome, great guests, great friends of mine, Jeff Haskins and Tadd Turner, to talk about that historic season, that historic play, the historic call by Vin Scully, everything related to the Dodgers during that particular year in 1988 to celebrate its 35th anniversary. And we have a lot of fun talking about it. It's always great to catch up with old friends, and then especially great to get to talk about the Dodgers, why we love the team so much, how come the city of Los Angeles loves the team so much. Very important to focus on right now, particularly when the team is not doing so well in the postseason. So later tonight will be Game 3 of the division series against the Diamondbacks, hoping that they can pull off a miracle. It's likely that they may not get past Arizona, but regardless of what happens, Dodgers organization is well loved by the city of Los Angeles. Lots of rich history to discuss and a bright future ahead of them, even if there's no World Series championship this season. So anyways, again, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jeff and Tadd. Again, it's always great for me to catch up with old friends and to talk Dodger baseball, and that we get to celebrate this momentous occasion, which again, as Los Angeles sports fans, we would consider it maybe perhaps the greatest moment in the history of professional sports. So here we go. This is my conversation about the 1988 World Series champions, Los Angeles Dodgers, celebrating their 35th anniversary with Jeff Haskins and Tadd Turner. So joining me tonight for this episode, it's Jeff Haskins and Tadd Turner. Jeff, Tadd, how are we doing tonight?
Pretty good. Thanks.
Good to see you both. And it's really exciting to commemorate and celebrate what many of us would consider not just the greatest play in the history of the Dodgers and the history of baseball, maybe even all professional sports.
Well, it was certainly one of the demonstrations of man's desire to overcome his situation and do better, be better than himself, because, well, I've got some pretty interesting insights into Kirk Gibson himself that I'll share a little bit later. But that whole team, the Dodgers were like the fourth best team statistically that year. They weren't expected to come anywhere near the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland A's, they were a force. They had the Bash brothers that year, Mark McGuire and Jose Canseco, and these guys were not to be messed with. And they got schooled.
I mean, they were definitely overachievers. I mean, that was the funny thing about them was they on paper were nowhere near as good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very interesting to. Oh, sorry, Jeff. Sorry to cut you off. It was interesting as I was preparing and studying to learn more about this particular year for the Dodgers because again, I was really young. I was only 8 years old when this whole thing happened. But I mean, I watched a documentary on YouTube, an old MLB like a VHS cassette called "Through the Eyes of a Winner," narrated by Vin Scully. It's a really really cool documentary. It's interesting to learn that the previous seasons before that, the Dodgers were pretty crummy, not very good at all. That the last in hitting, highest in errors in the league. Like you mentioned, Jeff, it was interesting that they made changes, and throughout the whole season, there was lots of adversity that they had to deal with in order to get to the World Series, which was pretty interesting to learn about.
Yeah, I would say that that's a lot to do with Tommy Lasorda. That was some of his best years right there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in well, you look at what happened yesterday. I want to talk about a little bit about what happened yesterday.
Uh-huh.
It kind of broke my heart watching a hero, someone who maybe that was just one too many games. I don't know. That was that. You guys see what I'm talking? Did you see the game?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it was depressing.
I watched the whole thing, and there's one thing about the Dodgers. If you were to ask me what part of the body the Dodgers were, they're the heart of baseball. And by the heart, I mean when their champion was down, I mean only completing a third of one inning before getting pulled. That was it. I knew that was going to be it because the Dodgers go the way of their leader. You know what I mean? I knew that was going to be a real tough one for them to overcome right off the bat. Not because the score was so lopsided. Not that's not the point. The point is that it's like sinking the flagship in an ocean battle. That's the end of it. Everyone else just pack up and go home, and we'll try again on Tuesday or Monday or whatever. And to have a team like the Diamondbacks, like last year, have the flipping Padres. Holy crap! I mean, it's like having a champion bred Cocker Spaniel that is made just for hunting. It's an excellent dog, and you're saving it up. You're gonna create puppies that will sell for thousands of dollars to hunters, and then some mongrel gets in the yard and knocks it up, and you're left with a litter full of mongrels. You know what I mean? To me, letting the Padres or the Diamondbacks into our house and allowing them to screw up our litter, it just didn't. The whole wild card thing to me doesn't make sense, and that's why the '88 Dodgers did make sense because they didn't have that kind of stuff. They only had to go through the Mets, and then that was it. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like having a brand new car and you park it in the Target parking lot, and some dude in a '67 microbus comes and opens the door and slams into it. that's how I feel about the doggone Diamondbacks and the Padres. They're okay, but put them away. The end of the season is there. They let them go on vacation while the Dodgers play, the Braves, or while the Dodgers play the Phillies. Someone that's actually their caliber.
Well, I'm with you. I'm not a huge wild card fan. I think I miss the old days where the regular season meant something.
Yeah.
And then you had the best team in the East and the best team in the West facing each other. I thought there was more drama. And so I'm with you. I totally missed the series, right? Because we all knew LA and the Mets was going to be huge in '88. I mean, it was must-watch television. It built all year long. And it just, to me, it made it so much more exciting.
Yep. And really, that was really the World Series. If you look at the stats, the statistics on it, they went 7 games. And
great series.
Yeah. That really was. I know we're here to talk about specifically about the World Series, and I think the idea that we have been dealing with a 2-man rotation for in our pitching this year, and still came out with 100 wins for the fourth time in full years. That's an MLB record. It's never been done before, and we have to sit here and watch freaking Diamondbacks, crap in our yard. It just really bothers me. I don't know. I'm sorry. It just really does.
Mhm.
I don't think there should be that much of a layoff between the end of the season and the first playoff game. And I don't think we should allow mongrel mutts to get into our yard. It's just
No, and I don't like the whole bye thing. Baseball, I think you take a week off. I think it hurts you.
yeah,
So you got a team who's been playing all week coming into our home. We haven't played in a week. I just think there's a huge advantage for that wild card team that the winner of the division. I mean, in baseball, a week off.
yep.
It's just too much.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, I had mentioned, that I wanted to focus on the World Series to celebrate its 35th anniversary. But I mean, the whole season, I think, was actually really fascinating. So having a discussion and talking about that, I think would be really cool too. So going back to your point earlier, Jeff, about Tommy Lasorda, it was interesting to learn that he won his 1000th game on August 27, 1988. So it was kind of a momentous occasion for the whole team in various aspects, which is pretty cool. And then we talk about, the team having to kind of rebuild in order to be competitive, chalk it up to management, as you mentioned, Jeff, that, Tommy Lasorda did an excellent job managing the team. GM Fred Clare made some good acquisitions during the offseason, including getting Kirk Gibson and Mike Davis, I mean, let's not sleep on him. He had a really important home run in the World Series as well. And I think game 3 or game 4. Yeah. So there's lots of aspects of the '88 season, to be honest.
Well, right, and we mentioned Fred Clare. I mean, you have to remember too that Al Campanis got fired. Yep. I think that off season before.
For that comment he made,
for that comment he made. So I mean, it was new management as well as like a new team. So it was kind of a situation that the Dodgers hadn't been in a long time.
Yeah.
So I remember when they made some of those moves, because the Dodgers had always kind of built from within. It was really the first time that I can ever remember they went out and got a guy like Drew Gibson. Mm-hmm. They went out and got a guy like Mike Davis, who was coming off really an all-star type season.
Yeah.
And I remember the talk in LA was like, what are we doing here? Like, we don't do this in LA. Like what the heck is going on? This Fred Clare guy.
Yeah.
So I almost think it had to work for him, or he probably wouldn't have lasted in LA.
Yeah. A name that doesn't get brought up enough is Peter O'Malley. He owned it. Mm-hmm. And for an owner to be able to invest where it's smart to invest, it's not as simple as it seems. It doesn't seem to be as easy of a decision. For instance, going back to today, I know I'm digressing by progressing, but Cody Bellinger, I really think we should have held on to Cody Bellinger. I saw James Outman, and my hat's off to James Outman. He's had a really great rookie year, but I don't think we'd be in this mess if Cody Bellinger was sitting out there in left field this year. During the series, he would have caught that ball. He would have. That's just from the perspective of ownership. Peter O'Malley was always the kind of guy that would give Tommy Lasorda and these guys the financing, the backup that they needed to produce that kind of team. And two other names that I want to bring up real quick too to discuss tonight: Oral Hershiser and even Steve Saxon. I don't really even like that guy, but what a player, what a ball player.
Yeah.
Personality and pretty boy aside, my hat's off. That guy became what? Did he ever make the MVP? Did he ever win the MVP?
I don't think so.
I think he got a batting title though.
The batting title he may have won. The MVP, I don't think so.
Yeah, but
that guy was good.
Got the MVP. And he deserved it, man. That guy went 59 consecutive innings without a run, without a hit. I mean, that's incredible. That's the Bulldog.
I'm not sure that'll ever be topped.
Right. And you see a spectacular moment with Kirk Gibson, and I certainly wouldn't take anything away from that. But you know what, boys? They would not have won without Oral Hershiser.
No.
There's no way.
Absolutely not.
That guy performed magic, and he pitched complete games, which is unheard of these days. And came
out of the bullpen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think he I think he started 2 games during the World Series and completed those 2 games, and he came out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
And the Bulldog, that's a day in and day out thing. Kirk Gibson definitely ignited that match and got it burning, but in the first game, but the Bulldog and those everyone else did an incredible job. And that you can't just win with one guy. You got to win with a team. It's a team effort.
Yeah, I remember Tim Belcher was a rookie that year, and he had a great postseason.
Yep.
Just a great postseason. So
was Mickey Hatcher on that team?
Yeah, Mickey Hatcher was on that team. Yep.
Yeah, I was just looking at my notes. I know he was on that team, and he was. I saw him at the LA County Fair a couple of years ago, standing in a booth with a couple of other guys, the 1988 world champions.
Oh, awesome!
Just standing around, and I remember him. He was a big part of that because he was so consistent and resilient. As many members of Mike Scioscia, Steve Yeager, one of the toughest men in sports. This was a stack.
What I mean, and Scioscia, to leave the World Series and go back to that Mets series. Remember, he had that big home run. I think it was in Game 7, and he was not a home run hitter.
Right.
And I think he only hit around 260, 265 that year.
Yeah.
But man, the guy was clutch. In big situations, he seemed to just come up big all the time.
Yeah. I was looking through the stats, and I think there were 5 players on the team that were over 280 batting average. I think it was 5 or 6 players. That's a good, solid team. That's not Freddie Freeman elite or Mookie Betts elite at this moment, but that is really good, solid. Those are the real workhorses.
Yeah, Franklin Stubbs had a good year that year.
Yep.
But Alfredo Griffin, he had a good season. John Shelby, I remember him that year. He was just electric that season.
Yeah, there was a lot about that team that created that sensation. But I don't think it could have been held together any better or by anyone else other than Tommy Lasorda.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows the story about what happened that day with Kirk Gibson? Who knows the details of it?
I don't. So if you could fill us in, Jeff, that'd be really cool.
Well, it's not like I was there. You know what it was, Dad? What happened?
Wait, is it the one where he was on the training table getting worked on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just went, got dressed, went and got a bat, went down to the at the end of the tunnel. There's a tee with the net, and it's funny you mentioned this, Jeff, because you could take a tour down at the stadium, and it's one of the things they talk about. And he was just hitting off a tee, he could barely hit off a tee, and he called Mitch Poole, I think was his name. I think at the time was one of the Bat Boys, and he told him to go tell Tommy he was ready if he needed him.
Yeah,
I think Tommy thought he was crazy.
Tommy did think he was crazy. In fact, he didn't even want him in there. He still didn't want him. And then Kirk went ahead and just helped himself into the the dugout. And people, players didn't just come and go in and out of the dugout back then. That was something that you get called in, you're in. But he just came in, and Tommy saw him, and Tommy was smart enough to realize, okay, I think he felt something.
Yeah. When I remember, because I remember this watching on TV, and when he entered into the dugout, because he hadn't been there all game long, the cameras went to him in the dugout.
Yeah.
And there was a buzz. You could feel it even at home watching on TV. There was something different there.
Yeah.
Because I remember Vince Scully saying he's got one leg, he can barely walk.
Yeah.
But you almost felt like, he was the MVP of that team. You got to put him out there.
Yeah. He had a bad hamstring.
Everybody wanted it. Yeah.
2 bad knees and a bad hamstring. And he was supposed to be done for the season. And he came out, and Vince Scully, I was listening to it on an AM radio, and I heard Vince Scully say, well, this is, it was almost like, well, this is the last ditch effort. And I wouldn't say that he questioned Tommy, because I don't think anyone did that, but he definitely was saying, well, okay, this is a do or die situation or something. I can't remember exactly what he said. I do remember exactly what he said after he hit the home run, that in the season of the impossible or improbable, the impossible just
Impossible,
happened. Yeah. And the way that guy went around the bases limping, and just pumping his arm, that was incredible. That was a phenomenal thing. But a little bit about Kirk Gibson, he was a linebacker. He played football, and he knew a little bit about strategy and intimidation. Earlier in the season, he scored. Let me think. I think he hit a double, and there was a bobble in the outfield, and he saw the opportunity. He was not a lickety split fast runner, but he noticed that the catcher got pulled and the pitcher was covering home base. So from second base, this linebacker comes rounding third, didn't pay any attention to the third base coach, and he's coming and he's eyeing the pitcher like, you gonna stand in my way? You that dumb? And the pitcher did what a pitcher should have done. He got his butt out of the way, and didn't matter where the throw went. He knew the art of one step ahead. What's going to happen if I come up to bat? Everyone's going to feel that pressure in the 88 world in the first game. Mid-season, he knew that his intimidating style was going to remove that the pitcher was going to run for cover, because back then we had collisions. We had brain injury collisions back then. I don't know if you've heard Steve Yeager talk lately, but watching him round that corner and charge, because I watched that very game, and charge, it looked to me like he was going to take the sod up with him, the way he was running. And that pitcher took, he didn't even have to get a fourth of the way to home base before that pitcher basically looked at his dugout and backed off, dust the plate off.
Well, he had a play earlier in the season where there was a pass ball and he was on second base. He scored from second base.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever seen that happen.
Yep.
And it was the same kind of thing. I mean, he just put his head down and nobody wanted to get in his way.
Yeah.
Because he was going to run him over.
Yep. Yeah. And what are you going to do with it? That's the idea. That's the mind game. Can't do that now. I mean, you just get removed from the game. But you can't. Yeah. That kind of gamesmanship is what I was saying. He was good at that. He saw an opportunity, and well, it's a run. A run is a run, right? How many games are won in one run?
A lot.
And then he proved it again in game one, where he knew, you know what? I'll bet you anything. He had in mind, all I got to get up there to do is swing the bat, because of who he is and how intimidating that was going to be. In other words, I'm playing the world's best team, and I'm sitting here on two bad legs and a hamstring, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to beat you anyhow. And he did it. Yeah, that was an amazing moment in sports history. But if you understand who Kirk Gibson was and how he played the game, even if it was football or baseball, that's exactly what made the Dodgers great that year. I think efforts from oral.
You've heard the interesting story about the advice he got from one of the coaches before the series started. It might have even been earlier in the year. There's a story where he said he was told by this coach, if Eckersley gets ahead in the count, he likes to throw the back foot slider.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was sitting on that pitch. They said he was waiting for that back foot slider, and that's the one that he hit out. But I know they've interviewed Eckersley, and he said, I don't ever remember throwing a back foot slider like that, ever. So he said, I don't know where that coach got that information from, but Gibson remembered what he had been told, and he was waiting for that pitch. And when he got it, he didn't miss.
I heard someone say he didn't even have his eyes open. That's what I heard. I mean, there were all kinds of funny stories, incredible stories about it. But the truth of the matter was, I think he scored that run before he even swung the bat.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember Vince Scully saying, he said the guy can't run. He might hit a ball off the wall and get thrown out at first base because the guy can't move.
Yeah.
So basically was going to take a home run for him to even reach base.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. And the rest of the series was remarkable also for many different reasons. I think that it was, like I said, an amazing testament to Tommy Lasorda and Albert. If you probably know more than I do about the actual statistics and stuff. But for a team like that was basically a fourth place team, to beat the A's at the time with the Bash brothers and all the hype surrounding I remember how intimidating I didn't get to see it, but Willie Stargell was an A, and he hit a ball into the parking lot at Dodger Stadium. You know, they always had that presence, that strength. Yeah. It's like,
Well, going back to the point that you had made, Jeff, about just what made the team so great. I mean, I really look at all the adversity they had to overcome. Just the fact that in the midseason, they lost both Fernando Valenzuela and Don Sutton to injuries. So they were done for the rest of the season. But then, as Had mentioned, they were able to pick up Tim Belcher, so a huge addition to the team as well. And then you look back to the first game against the Mets for the championship series for the National League. They lost that game in a 7-game series. In fact, actually, I have it here in my notes that Hershiser was up 2 runs, and then they still lost game 1, which is pretty crazy to think. And then they had to go to New York at Shea Stadium under terrible conditions. I think the first game at Shea was like delayed, and it was really bad weather conditions that they had to deal with. And then you look at game 1 of the World Series, Jose Canseco hit a grand slam against Belcher. So, things like that could be dejecting to a team. Like, as you mentioned, Jeff, with last night's game, that if something like that happens, it can be detrimental to the psyche. But the spirit of the team would be to just battle through all the adversity they were going through. And you'll pay attention to what coaches had been saying, like to the point Tad had made about Kirk Gibson, watching for that pitch. So things of that nature, I think what made the team really, really special, that when you're down on the ropes, you're able to get yourself back up and then just keep fighting and playing. So it's a true testament to just how great that team really was.
But you remember, I think it was in the playoffs, they lost Jay Howe. Their closer was suspended.
Yeah.
Because he had that file on him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was yet another piece of adversity that they had to deal with. Mm-hmm. I mean, they really did get hit with a lot that season. But check this out. I thought this was interesting. So you brought up the Jose Canseco Grand Slam, which I can't remember if it was in the first or the second inning, but I remember it was early in the game.
Yeah.
Because I remember as a kid, I remember just the feeling of like, oh, this game's over. I mean, you just don't recover from that. But check this out. So I found this. It says Game 1 is the only game in World Series history in which a grand slam hitting team failed to both win the game and the series.
Yep. I read the same thing when I was looking over these notes.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So logic would dictate at that point that, yes, the Dodgers are going to lose that game and the whole series. But, I mean, what I would tell all the teams is, like, don't listen to logic. I mean, if you have faith in yourselves and want to win, the desire to compete, then go out there and do it.
Right. And Jeff brought it up. I mean, that A's team was, I think, one of the best teams I had ever seen in my life up to that point.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just the hitting. Their pitching staff was like pretty incredible too. I think Dave Stewart won 20 games that year. I mean, he was lights out. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think in almost every category in the media, the Oakland A's had the advantage. Mm-hmm. I mean,
Bob Welch, Storm Davis, Dennis Eckersley, and Rick Honeycutt was on their pitching staff.
I mean, they were good, really good,
incredible. And they were intimidating. They were big and strong, and like I said, the Bash brothers were in full strength back then, and that was before they were enhanced. Mm-hmm. When Mark,
like you said, Dave Parker. I mean, Dave Parker was a specimen too. That guy was huge.
Yeah. I just remember being impressed with the long ball with the A's, and like I said, that one ball. I think there was only one Dodger. I can't even remember who it was. There's only one Dodger in history that hit the ball out of the ballpark, and but Willie Stargell was the other one when he played with the. Oh no, he was a Pirate.
Yeah, he was a Pirate. I know Mike Piazza did it.
Mhm.
He did it
Into
once.
the parking lot.
Yeah, he hit it, but he hit it over the bullpen, into the parking lot over the bullpen.
Oh,
Because remember back then it was
Yep. Yeah.
before the renovations. It was, that walkway to go to the bathrooms was behind the bullpen, and then right behind that was the fence to the players' parking lot.
yeah. So
And he
that
did
as
that. I
far
think
as
it was
that wasn't as far as that was about 400 and probably about 445 feet or so, maybe 450.
I would imagine
Back
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean,
think
Dave, I know.
Stargirl's was way over 500.
Yeah, Stargell hit it over the pavilion.
Yeah.
And then what's his name? Who's with the Yankees now? Stanton. I think Stanton did it once also.
Oh, I haven't
More
seen
recently. Yeah, more recently he hit it over the pavilion.
Yeah, that guy's a beast. I mean, it's like a professional
big,
wrestler
man.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, he's big.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. I wanted to go back to Hershiser, because again, I think it's as you mentioned, Jeff. I mean, he's kind of maybe the unsung hero because just of how spectacular that play was for Gibson. But as you mentioned, yeah, without Hershiser, they're not winning the World Series that year. And going back to Tad's point about the record, it was actually really cool. So I was just researching some stuff on MLB.com to look at it. So to win the record, Kershaw had to be Don Drysdale, who set the record for the Dodgers 20 years prior to that at 58 innings. Before that, so again, a couple players that I didn't even know about or really just vaguely familiar. I mean, old timer. So like Bob Gibson for the Cardinals at 47 innings. He was number 3 on the list. The most recent one was Zach Greinke, who did it for the Dodgers at 45 and 2/3 innings in 2015. So to Tad's point of like a player being able to do it, I don't know if anyone's really going to do that. If 45 is the closest anyone's gotten in recent years, but it is interesting to look at that stat and just how amazing and phenomenal Hershiser was, winning the Cy Young that year, World Series MVP winner that year as well. So a team effort for sure. But I mean, Hershiser was just an amazing, wonderful player.
Yeah. And he probably made $20,000.
Yeah, right. I mean, that season probably ruined his career. I mean, the amount of innings that he pitched, getting into the postseason, pitching as often as he did, he was never the same.
Yeah.
Never the same. I've seen interviews with him where he's talked about it. He's mentioned that it probably did, he was never the same pitcher after that. But he said, I wouldn't trade it. I mean, why do you play? You play to win a World Series. And he did that.
Joe Davis was talking to him. They commented. One of them's color commentator. The other one calls the game, right? Joe Davis and Oral Hershiser. And I think it was last year, Joe Davis mentioned somebody was trying to get Oral Hershiser to talk about the longevity, the strength, and the endurance of current pitchers. And Oral wouldn't say nothing. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. He says that it was a different era. Tommy Lasorda used to pitch 2 games in a day when he was no spectacular pitcher, but he'd be throwing somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 pitches a day, live action ball. And can't imagine any of these guys doing anything. I mean, 100 is an amazing accomplishment.
But you're right. There's some old timers that threw like 200 inning shutouts or complete games. It was just you're right, a different era.
Yeah.
I miss it. I miss that bulldog mentality pitchers had.
Yeah. When a relief pitcher really was a relief pitcher. I was looking at the staff, and there's only like 4 relief pitchers on the staff because they just didn't use them, maybe once in a while.
Well, I remember my dad saying, he said, as a kid, he said nobody wanted to go to the bullpen because you only were sent to the bullpen if you weren't very good.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to be a starter, and you weren't working out if you went to the bullpen. They sent you there to be fixed.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, now they specialize.
You guys see Joe Kelly last
Oh, yeah.
Dang. That dude's arm is electric. It's magic. I don't know, man. I sure hope he stays with the team.
I like that guy.
Yeah, they say he had the absolute filthiest pitch of the year overall. That's when he was still pitching. Who'd he come from? The Cubs?
The White Sox.
The White Sox, okay. When he was still pitching for the White Sox. And I saw the replay about 9 times. I couldn't believe it. It looked like there were 2 balls. It looked like they cut away they cut away at one moment, and then someone threw a ball from first base or something. Something like 11 inches of movement, of horizontal movement.
Oh, gee whiz.
Son of a gun. How wide is the plate? It basically went from one side of the plate to the other. Well,
Yeah, I just picked
you're
up
right.
his book, the Damn Near Perfect Game.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited to read it. I haven't started it yet, but I mean, I think he's just unfiltered, just like tells it as it is. My understanding is he does go off against the Astros and the cheating scandal stuff, so that'll be interesting to get.
Oh, nice.
I think I'll see that. I think I'll read that. I saw you post that on Facebook or something.
Yeah. I got into the habit of reading more reading than I used to do, so I'm gonna try and pick it up pretty soon.
I didn't think any of you boys read. That's something.
Well, back in the '90s, no, we played too many video games.
Good thing Derek's not on this.
No, that's a fair point.
Get his crayons out. I'm just kidding. Just joking, Derek. I love you, and I don't really want to have to hear it from you.
So I wanted to ask you though, because obviously you're the old timer from our group here, but so back then you would have been probably in your mid to late 20s, right? In the '88.
Yeah. See, I think I was 20. Well, shouldn't be that difficult to figure out. 25 years old. 25.
Oh, okay, yeah, mid 20s, very cool. Do you remember much about the festivities, the atmosphere around the city when they won?
I didn't. You know why? I was a very young husband and father. We had just had our first baby, and I had started that. I bought that concrete pumping company. But, and I remember kind of losing touch with the Dodgers for several years. But just watching them, I always paid attention to the World Series, though. I always did. And same thing as the Super Bowl. I'm a Super Bowl watcher, and I would always. It hasn't been that long. I'd say about 2015 was when Audrey and I started watching Dodger baseball again. Since then, it's just one of those things where I wouldn't say that I lost my love for the Dodgers or love for baseball, but I was coaching my kids for a long time, and it just took my focus away from it. So I didn't really get to experience that. And it's funny because I had a cabinet shop in downtown LA at that time too. I was running the concrete company and did that. So right below Dodger Stadium there on North Spring Street is where the cabinet shop was. You would think I would have known or experienced it. I listened to the games regularly on AM radio with the call with Vin Scully, but I don't remember. What do you know about it?
Well, not so much. That's why I wanted to ask your opinion, because again, Tad and I would have been really young when it happened. I mean, Tad would have just been about 11, right?
Yeah, we were in the just leaving the 5th grade.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I wanted to get your perspective if you could remember, because it was unfortunate that because of COVID, I mean, COVID kind of rained on the Dodgers parade for 2020.
Yeah. I remember the parade. I remember the parade in '88 because I mean, like the local stations had it on, and it was a big deal. I remember that, and I remember everywhere you went, it was Dodger everything. I remember going to the mall, like in December for my birthday. I think I went birthday shopping with my grandma, and it was Dodger stuff everywhere. The city was still just absolutely abuzz and electric about the World Series. Remember, you couldn't turn on the radio without. I remember the big song back then was that Tiffany song, Locomotion, and someone had changed the words to Dodger Motion, and so like you turn it on the radio, it was almost every time you turn on the radio, there was like, oh, we're going to play the Dodger Motion again. It was such a big deal. I think a bigger deal than it was when the Lakers won. Because if you remember, the Lakers won in '88 also. That was the second of their back-to-back. And I just remember it. LA's a Dodger town. As much as we love the Lakers and, we love the USC Trojans and all these other teams, we're a Dodger town, and it became very evident when they won the World Series in '88. The city shut down for the parade. It was really cool.
Yeah, I do remember you making that point before, Tad. This is how much the city absolutely loves the Dodgers. So it's fascinating to hear stories about like just how massive and huge it was. And again, it's just it irks me with COVID because again, like,
I know.
but so that's what we're hoping. I mean, again, if we learned anything from the '88 season, that adversity can actually build character, and I think can actually build this team to be tougher. So expecting the team to come out, bat swinging for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so too, Albert. I hope so. And I remember Audrey and I drove down to the beach yesterday because that's what we do. And I was thinking, we're thinking about relocating, trying to get closer to our kids, selling the property here and moving out of state. And you know something? There's something about LA, and the Dodgers play a big part of that for us. The Dodgers, frankly, it's the Dodgers, Felipe's, and the Temple. Those are the three things that are really keeping us there. And I said, Audrey, look at it this way. If you like hockey, we have the Kings. If you like basketball, we have the Lakers. If you like baseball, we have the Dodgers. And if you don't like baseball, we have the Angels. So it's perfect. The Angels aren't really baseball.
Oh, that was a joke. Okay.
Everyone else got it. You guys are dense, man.
No. I was confused by what you were saying. I thought maybe you slipped of the tongue.
I had that on the tip of my tongue this whole time.
All right. I didn't think you were finished. I was waiting for the punchline.
I'm gonna pull that trigger pretty quick. I'm probably gonna have to speak in a different board, and I'm gonna probably give that.
It's funny that you mentioned that though, because with Nick having moved to Texas and living there, I thought it was funny in 2000 during COVID. They played that series in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And he went. He said there were more Dodger fans there than just about anything else for those games. But just talking with him, I mean, it's one of the things he definitely misses about living in LA.
Yeah.
Is, he's like, the games are on later. It's harder to get excited about it because no one else cares.
Yeah.
And when he does come into town to visit, it's always, a Dodger game's always on that schedule.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. He's like, if I'm going to be here, I got to go to the stadium. I got to feel the excitement of Dodger baseball. Because you're right. And here in LA, everybody's a Dodger fan.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's, I mean, even just look at the building, look at the stadium. The stadium, it belongs in Los Angeles. It's got the colors, the blue, the sky blue. It's a beautiful sensation. We spoke before about my history when I was a young boy going and having my grandmother take me for season tickets and being able to have lunch with the players before the season began for a couple of years there. And then arriving early for batting practice and waiting until they got done with their showers and were leaving, stalking them in the parking lot and getting signatures,
Yep.
That's LA, man. That is LA. Yeah. It's just nothing better in the whole world about, no other stadium. And to your point too, Ted, the Dodger fans, the Dodger team travels better than any other team in Major League Baseball. Everywhere we watch, any camera angle you see, there's going to be a Dodger fan in it. Anywhere you go, maybe the Yankees might have that same kind of affiliation, but I don't think there's anybody else. The Phillies maybe come close somewhere in there. Red Sox, regrettably so, yeah. But honestly, it's the Dodgers.
Well, and I think Dodger fans are generally real fans. I mean, I think you find a lot of Yankee fans. Oh, sure, Yankee fans show up when they're good and they're winning. But when the Dodgers are bad, I remember that Albert mentioned previous to '88 and even into the '90s when the teams weren't as good, we still set attendance records.
Yeah,
I mean, we support the Dodgers regardless of how good they are, and I don't think even the other historic teams in the league don't necessarily get that same type of feeling. And I think it's right. Tommy Lasorda used to say, "I bleed Dodger blue." I think if you grew up in LA, I mean, how do you get away from the legacy of our parents talked about Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale, and they were here when the team first came to LA. And then to go from there into the 70s when Tommy took over, and they went to the World Series, 3 times in the late 70s, finally won it in 81, again in 88. I think that it's really built a legacy that's generational.
Yeah.
for families here in LA. You know, I'm a fan because my dad's a fan, and I know Albert's a fan because his dad was a fan. And to me, that's what makes it different about being in LA. It's a family thing here in LA.
Yeah.
And I mean, even to the point where I remember going to games, you know, sitting out in the pavilion with some cholos where you're at times kind of like, dang, man, I'm like the only white guy sitting out here. These guys look pretty tough. But, you know, if you got the blue color on, I mean, they're high-fiving you. They got your back. I mean, you're family when you're a Dodger fan.
Yeah.
It's different than anything I've ever seen with other teams.
And one kind word will get you the best barbecue or carne asada that you've ever had in your life.
Yeah.
On the way out of the stadium. Just pass by the trunk, man. They've got it full.
It's cool though. I mean, it's so cool.
That is true. Yeah. You know, okay, you guys, what was the greatest single play in baseball history? And where did it happen and when? I mean, comes up every year. They talk about the greatest save, the greatest play.
I mean, for me, it's got to be Kirk Gibson's home run.
That's what I would say too. I mean, true, we're homers for the team, but you know what I thought was kind of an interesting point. So going back to my time as a missionary in Brazil, like we're around lots of people who aren't from LA, but like who love sports. And you know, Utah people, they tend to be really prideful for their teams, for BYU, stuff like that. But so many of them who love baseball would actually talk about that home run. It's like, oh, that was actually really something. So even if you don't necessarily view it as the greatest play, I think a lot of people who love sports appreciate it for how great and momentous it was. But that would be my pick as well, Jeff.
I think the top two plays occurred at Dodger Stadium. They do this every year. At some point during the year, they always discuss this. The Kirk Gibson home run and Rick Monday pulling the American flag out of that hairy hippie's hand who was trying to ignite a polyester flag with a stupid lighter. He ripped it out of that dude's hand on July 4th, 1976. And handed it off, and then Tommy Lasorda ran after the guy. Ended up beating the crap out of him and throwing him out of the stadium. But that was the best play, and I just bring it up because it occurred at Dodger Stadium. The two top plays in the history of baseball both occurred at Dodger Stadium. You know, it's we talk about standing in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. You can't beat it. You just can't beat being a Dodger fan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember Tommy Lasorda beat the crap out of the Philly Fanatic one time. I
remember that too.
You don't want to mess with Tommy.
That was a real thing. That was a real thing. That wasn't theatrics. He probably would have went to jail.
But you know, I hear people say things like, "Oh, I just don't like baseball. You know, it's boring." For me, I just don't understand it growing up as a Dodger fan. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, you look at just those two situations alone. Yeah. There's something romantic to me about Dodger baseball. Mm. It's more than just a game. You know, and when you throw into the mix that Vin Scully, you know, listening to him as a kid growing up and the pictures that he would paint when I'd be listening to games, falling asleep at night because I had school in the morning, there was a romance to it. It was more than just a game. There was something greater about it. And so it's one of those things that I just don't quite understand when people say that. Oh, I don't understand baseball. I mean, what's not to understand? It's like watching a great play or a great musical. You know, it's so different than any other sport. I just love it.
Yep, I agree.
I think all Dodger fans do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe we owe that to Vin Scully. I don't know.
I don't know if we owe it to Vin Scully or Vin Scully owes his life to baseball. You know, I mean, what would he have done? He was a talented broadcaster, but you know, I got cussed out by him. I got
no.
I was pumping concrete at a property happened to be next door to his in Benedict Canyon, and I fired. You know, we'd get there about 20 minutes early. So the first concrete truck gets there at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I'm there at 6:30. And the first thing I do is I start up the engine of the pump to get it warmed up. It's a diesel and I wanted to get it warmed up. And I'm pulling out my hose and stuff. And I see this red-haired guy sitting in a bathrobe with a real angry look on his face. And he's marching out of his house. and he starts yelling at me from about 20, 30 feet away. And I recognize him, and I couldn't even talk, and he's just yelling. He's calling me all kinds of names. You SOBs come out here every TD day, and you start up that gosh darn blah 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 pump and blah 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 blah. Because the guy next door to him was doing a lot of concrete work, and this was the first time I had been there, but he was really angry. He said, "It's 7 effing a.m." He said, "Turn that TD thing off until 7 a.m. How hard is it for you to?" I said, "Scully, you've been Scully. Got the don't shut up, you're pump, you idiot."
Oh, if only cell phones existed back then.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I was actually cussed out by Vince Scully.
That is cool.
Still love him. He's the best.
Right?
Yeah. I wish I could have
that
had
is
that
cool.
I wish I could have had that written out on something to have him sign it.
It's so funny to hear that story because you think of Vince Scully as being so well-mannered and polite and etiquette, eloquent when the way he speaks. It's like, oh, wow, he actually cussed out our old young men's leader. Who probably deserved it too. So
Yeah. No, I guess I did. I mean, that's a very nice neighborhood, and it was noisy. And it's funny because if I had been the first pumper there, I probably wouldn't have had that reaction. But apparently this had been going on for a while. He was not happy. He was not a happy dude that morning. But yeah, that's my claim to fame. I got cussed out by Vince Scully.
Oh, very nice.
Love it.
Well, that was all the talking points I had for tonight. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to bring up about the 88 season or the Dodgers in general?
I would just add one quick addendum. It's not the topic that we're discussing today, but the 81 Dodgers were pretty amazing also. And that was really one of the, now I was present for that homecoming at the stadium when they came home on that, because that was my senior year of high school. And it was that was pretty doggone amazing too. We caught Fernando Mania the first game of the season that year, and every time he pitched, we were up there in the cheap seats watching it. And so you're right. I mean, it all encompassing, but specifically about the 88 Dodgers, that there were several lessons there in to be had as far as coaching and heart, playing with heart and using your head. Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm with you, Jeff. I mean, I was young in 81, but I loved baseball according to my parents, from the time I was 18 months old. It was really because of that team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took them a few years to win the World Series, but I mean, Steve Yeager was my favorite player growing up. I absolutely loved Steve Yeager. I mean, I hated Mike Scioscia for years because he took Steve Yeager's job. And as a kid, that was hard to see that transition. But I mean, that 81 team was a ton of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an amazing team. That's true. I didn't like Austin Barnes for the same reason, because I liked AJ Ellis so much.
Right.
But
my wife still feels that way because that was her favorite player. She still brings it up.
Yeah. Oh well.
Well, she brought it up yesterday. She said, "I bet you if AJ was behind the plate, he wouldn't have had that. Kershaw wouldn't have had that kind of game."
Yeah, maybe not. Because what did Will Smith? And I'm not taking nothing away from Will Smith. I think he's an amazing athlete and an amazing catcher, and all around great player. But what's he, like 18 years old? I mean, I know he's not 18 years old, but there's a certain amount of seasoning that comes along with being a veteran, like Steve Yeager or like AJ Ellis.
I think there's such a legacy with Dodger catchers also. I mean, Steve Yeager still works with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he taught Mike Scioscia. I mean, Steve Yeager was one of the best defensive catchers I'd ever seen, which is why I just loved him as a kid.
Yep.
But you could see that with Scioscia. I mean, it's funny. I think more than any other team, Dodger catchers, they have a history.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to let go of those guys that you fall in love with who are catchers for the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Thank you both so much.
It's a good time.
it's really great to have both of you on, just catching up with old friends, but then also just reminiscing about this historic 35th anniversary, first occurring on October 15th, 1988. So it's just amazing how time flies, and reminiscing about how much we love the team and how much we'll continue to love the team into the future. As Tad mentioned, it's a family thing. So, you know, I've already taken my daughter, and we're going to take our adopted son to games, and they're both going to grow up loving the team. We'll see if they make the right decisions in life and staying with the team, but I imagine they will.
I think they will. I think they will.
But you know what's so funny though? Even with our group of guys that grew up together, you can't take Dodger baseball out of us. I mean, so much of what we would do revolved around either going to games or watching playoff games or getting together for a game. It's really funny how it's just intertwined really with all of our relationships together.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow Dodger baseball always was involved. We look for reasons to go to games together, to get together to watch games. It's probably one of the reasons why I still have such fond memories of when I do watch baseball, you know, because I do think about all the guys, you know, when I'm watching games at times, and the different fun experiences that we had going to games and some of the funny jokes. That's the way I feel about it. It's just hard to separate that for me when it comes to all you guys.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Well, if there's nothing else for tonight, we'll go ahead and wrap up. But Jeff and Tad, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And we'll do this again very, very soon. We'll get the rest of the crew together, and hopefully David will join us as well, where we can just joke around and have fun together as friends like we do.
Yeah,
sounds good.
Thank you, Albert.
Thanks, everybody. You've been listening to the Casting for Fun podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Love you guys, man.